Hey Susan, welcome to Celine's Dijon. Today I'm starting a new series. It's technically my first series, I guess, where I essentially go over all of the basics of drag makeup. I feel like this could be definitely really helpful for some newer queens getting into drag for the first time. I personally didn't really have too many struggles getting into drag, but that's because I was doing like special effects makeup, which definitely had its hurdles when I started doing that, and like normal makeup. So I figured those are some of my strongest areas in terms of drag. I may as well teach other people how to do that. In this video, I'm going over very specifically drag cover, and I'm going really far in detail on how to like cover your eyebrows seamlessly. And then I'm also doing the base foundation, not including contour. Contour will be in the next video, and I'll really be talking about how to properly structure a face depending on how you want that to look. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put all of my hair back into a wig cap. This is not how I would normally prep to do drag makeup, but since I'm not going out or anything, I'm quarantined, that's why I'm doing it, so I'm kind of stuck here. Otherwise, if I was going out or I was like dancing in it, I would definitely secure it very, very different. Because if you were to just normally do this, it would, your wig would fly off. So my skin is like cleaned and moisturized. I did that about 3 hours ago. That's the best time window to wait to make sure that you haven't got any like moisture still sitting at the top, nothing's pushing through. Really minimize everything that can actually affect your makeup. So now we're going to start on the brow block. So this is something that I see a lot of queens really making errors in, even if they're a little bit like further into doing drag. You can either use Prozaid, which is pretty good, however it's a bit of a pain to remove. I personally use Elmer's glue stick. I find it works just fine. If you layer it up, it's not gonna sweat off. The only type of glue that I've ever found to work is the Elmer's washable school glue. The Elmer's disappearing purple washable school glue. You want the small one. If you get the large one, it's going to gunk up all around your eyebrow and you're gonna waste a crap ton of product. The first step, which a lot of queens miss, and is really one of the most essential steps getting a smooth cover in my opinion, is you get an alcohol wipe and you go back and forth in the brow. Essentially what this is going to do is it is going to remove all of the oil from the brow so that the glue lays properly. You really want to make sure you get underneath all the brow hairs just so there is no oil remaining around your eyebrows. So now you're going to take the glue. Actually, you got to give this a couple seconds to dry. While this is drying, I'd normally be duct taping my hairline to secure wigs. And now what we're going to do is we're going to wind it up a little bit. And we're going to start from the tail end of the brow. And we're going to go inwards all the way to the front. We're going to push everything down and everything back up towards the center. Back out, and just do a couple quick circles over top of the brow. Now we're going to take a comb. Some people use spoolies. I prefer a comb because it's more solid, it's not going to break on you, and it really allows you to press it flat with this little section here. So we're going to hold it through, and we're going to essentially comb the hair up. You want to apply as much pressure as you possibly can to the brow as you are doing this. You do want to be struggling to get through the brow during this layer, otherwise it's not laying properly. You want to make sure you really get the end of the brow. The front tends to be the easiest section for most people to lay, and the end tends to be the more difficult section to lay, as these hairs kind of want to grow that way. However, if you allow them to rest that way, it's going to create more bumps underneath your makeup because the hair will not be laying against the skin, it'll be laying against other hairs which are laying against the skin. So I keep pushing this up until it is holding. Normally I would have a mirror like directly in front of me and I would be holding a mirror, and I'd have a hairdryer like just underneath, and just after the comb passes over, a hairdryer on cool I'd put over it. You want to make sure that if you do the hairdryer trick, it's on cool, because if it's on warm, it's just going to stop it from drying altogether. If the tail really isn't laying flat, you want to take the glue stick again and you just want to push upwards while the tail is still wet. If you let the tail dry while it's like overlapping weird, it will create more texture. You need to make sure you deal with it during the first layer, or it's going to be a problem right through to the end. And you just want to take anything. So I'm going to use like a lipstick because that's what I've got on hand. And you want to press it really hard against it. So you don't want to be combing now, you want to be like pressing. Your skin and the glue should be resisting to you pulling upwards because you're doing it like as hard as you can. It should hurt a little bit. Now I'm going to do the same thing to the other eye. I'm actually encountering something over on this side that I didn't encounter on this side. So if you are kind of digging on too much of like that angle as opposed to that angle, there's a good chance that your skin will like fold into itself and then the hair will be laid across the fold. You don't want that. You want to, if that happens, put the comb about here and just pull it downwards on the actual skin section to just release that little fold. Now we're going on to the second layer. The second layer is essentially exactly the same as the first one, except we're not going to comb it afterwards, and you're not going to do the initial back and forth. You're just going to press directly up. Actually, you want to apply more pressure than you did last time. You want to press quite hard, and you want to just go up, 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 following the direction that you have brushed the brows. You want to press it hard just because if the bottom layer is still slightly wet underneath, it'll also apply additional pressure to keep it really flat, as well as creating, of course, a thicker layer so that it actually fills in the gaps in the brow rather than just laying the brow completely flat. Also, while you are doing this, you don't want to do any facial expressions up here at all. If you do that, it's likely going to disturb the brows and make the final result a lot less polished. A lot less polished. So this is layer number 3. Layer 4. Okay, so this isn't the end of the blocking process. However, if you were just intending to do a look, you're not intending to really go out, or you just are lucky and don't sweat much, you can leave it as this and then go on to what I'm going to immediately follow this up with. I'm just going to do this because I am going to be taking this off right after. But essentially what you want to do is you want to lay this up more if you're going to do that. So these are like the intermittent layers. You don't really do anything special to them. So there's 3 after the base layer. So that's a total of 4 layers without any alteration in how you're applying it. I've done up to 12 layers total. So that's 10 layers where it would be now, because we're going to do 2 more layers after the intermittent layer phase. So the next layer we're going to apply a little bit differently. We don't want the glue stick to be as dry as it has been, so we need to get it wet. You could use actual water to get it wet, and if you are doing it on someone else, you definitely want to do that. But if you're just doing it yourself, obviously you can just lick the glue stick. And then you want to just go up very softly on the glue. Lick it again. And just do very, 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 very soft strokes. Just going sideways in the opposite direction to fill in as many of the holes as you can. If the glue is at any point feeling dry, just lick it again or wet it with water. Also, if you do have particularly unruly brows, I forgot to mention this, the more you repeat this, the smoother it will get, because your brows will kind of be like whipped into obedience, and they'll just kind of sit like this a lot more naturally. They naturally do not want to sit like this, but eventually, as you do this more and more, they'll get used to it, and they'll just lay with more and more ease. Now, for the final layer, so you want to shake that up. You want to, oh, that's a lot. Anyway, you want to really like pack it with powder. You don't really want anywhere on the top half to not be completely covered in powder. And like, I mean, completely covered in powder. Now the top layer, what we are going to do actually, before the top layer, we need to get another alcohol wipe. I swear, I'm all over the place today. But anyway, we're gonna get another alcohol wipe. We're gonna get a little mirror, and we're just gonna go with it under, avoiding the eyelid. We don't want to get the alcohol wipe on the eyelid at all. That would be a disaster. And around the edges, essentially, you don't want to touch anywhere where there's hair, and you want to leave a really thin slither around the hair. But you want to remove all of the excess glue that isn't really needed to hold down the brow to minimize texture. So now we've done that, we're going to take the glue again one more time. We're not licking it, we're not doing anything fancy. And we're just going to do very small strokes with firm pressure directly upwards. Because we don't really want to go outside the lines, we just kind of want to fill in the absolute top where the glue already is. But we still do want to be applying pressure, so we're depositing as much glue as possible in that small area. You probably want to do this one at a time if you're newer to it, because I'm not particularly fussy with it. I'm already used to it. I'm going to do it both at once, but essentially now you want to take the powder on the first one you did. You just want to like really firmly press it over. And you can already kind of see that the brow is mostly erased. So the powder, because it's colored, is going to bond to the still wet glue and create the first layer of coverage to stop it peeking through your foundation. I'm gonna close that powder so it doesn't spill everywhere. And now I want to take a really fluffy brush. We want to dust that away. I like to still leave it like mostly undisturbed where the physical brow itself is, because now we're going to go on to color correcting. Color correcting is another big mistake I see queens making, because they essentially paint their faces orange. You don't want it to look orange or it's going to affect the color of the foundation at the end. So I get a little small, very small, like flat top, I guess not quite kabuki. You want it to be this kind of shape. This is not the right one. This one is too big, but you want it to be very flat at the top. So the brush that I normally use is this. So it's small, flat top. It's got longer bristles, which I prefer for this because it minimizes the amount of product you can put on. The longer the bristles are, the more it will, the more softly it will hit the face and the less dense the production will be. Ideally, you'd also want a longer brush just to really lighten it up, because the further, something that not a lot of people talk about, let's get an actual long brush for the example. But if you hold the brush up here and you place it down, you're blending, it won't blend. It'll just distribute a lot of product and will be very high pressure. Whereas if you hold it about at the middle, that's good for initially applying it. It's kind of that's out of frame. But when you do an intermediate level on there, it kind of gives you a medium texture, which is good for initially building it up. And right at the end, you want to hold it right at the end. You want minimal control. You just want to go back and forth to blend. And that will give you the lightest, most not blown out, but the most blended appearance possible. So now what I do is I take, this is just a cheap color correcting palette. So you don't want to do a bright orange, you actually want to do more of a peachy shade. If you are darker in complexion, you'd probably want to take a little bit more of a dark shade, but you don't want the shade to be crazy far away from your skin. You just want it to be a lot warmer. Not even a lot warmer, just a little bit warmer than your skin, because you don't want to make your face orange. You want to block the blue from coming through. So it's just enough where when you can currently see it, just a little bit, and when the blue goes away, it'll be mostly gone. So that is a lot of product. That's a lot more you need. Have you noticed how my face isn't orange? It's actually lighter than the rest. That's going to help shift it away from being blue, because the blue creates darkness in the eye. I'm just really blending that out. And also, because I highlight here anyway, it's better to use a lighter shade than a darker shade. Gotta take a little bit more up here. Honestly, with the coverage of most drag foundations, you don't need to color correct, but it is just something I thought to go over because some people do get very, very strong 5 o'clock shadows. And then because they have the stronger 5 o'clock shadow, they feel, oh, I really, really, really need to cover this. So I'm gonna essentially paint my face orange, but that just means you need more foundation to actually cover it up. Pull that back. And also while you're here, you want to take the orange. Actually, I didn't dust this off first. First, you want to dust off the brows. And I want to take the, not orange, but the peachy shade. You just want to dab it over the brow. And you just want the brow to actually not quite be gone. You want it to still partially be there, but you want it to be substantially less blue. I'm actually just gonna take my finger to blend this in because it isn't really. If you have any other like big skin concerns, you can also color correct for that. If you have redness, like severe redness, you want to use a very pale green. If you have like purple, not like blue, purple, you want to use yellow, and then purple's to correct like jaundice in the skin. Now what we want to do is we want to take that colored powder again, so open that back up. We want to load up the thing just a little bit, the powder puff just on the end, and we just want to dab that over and blend that out. We don't want to be going too light on the powder, because we're not trying to look natural and skin-like. Like, if that happens to happen, that's great. But powder underneath foundation actually helps with its longevity. It just makes it look a little bit heavier. But the foundation we use is going to look heavy regardless of what is underneath it. Just because it is like a thick cream stick foundation. Everything's powdered. You want to take the brush, you will hold it right at the end to not disturb anything. And you just want to flick as much of the powder away as you can. What's left will act as both a primer. I don't use normal primers in drag. I only use that if I'm doing out of drag makeup, because I just feel like the powder is better because it absorbs the oil underneath and the sweat as it comes through. You do really want to layer underneath as opposed to just on top to stop like sweat and everything coming through. Because if you think of your skin like your like makeup, like paint. Here's your skin, here's like the outside world, here's the paint. You might get a little bit of rain, wind from the outside, but from the inside you're getting oils which break down makeup. You use oil to clean makeup, and you're also getting a lot of moisture just coming through. You want to block that. It's less important to use a setting spray to block that. It's more important to block the skin coming through to the actual makeup itself. So that's also like why I'm very pro priming and not primers don't work. They do work. I just find it's more effective to just use powder when I'm doing like the really, really heavy drag stuff. Now I'm going to take my foundation. So I actually, let's cap my glue. I use a really cheap foundation actually, because I find I actually use quite a cheap foundation because I find it works just as well as the higher end ones. So this is the Revolution Makeup Revolution London Fast Base Stick Foundation. That's, yeah, Fast Base Stick Foundation in the shade F8. And I'm going to take that, I'm going to, let me pop open my mirror. I'm going to start over the brows. I'm going to do one swipe, just a couple of swipes over the brow. You want to cover most of the brow directly with foundation, because that's where you're going to need the most coverage. You want to just kind of lightly dot the foundation everywhere else. If there are any problem areas, go directly over that. If not, you don't really need it. I like to go over my nose because I just really don't like my freckles. Oh, that's got some weird texture going on. And we don't want to be using an excessive amount of product, because if you do, you will feel it. And also, the less product you have on, the longer it will last, which sounds contradictory, but the lasting of your makeup also includes how it looks. So with less foundation, it won't be running, it'll be kind of falling, if that makes sense. Because like, if it's really thick, layers will be slipping while layers are still there, so it'll be mixing, melding, and just looking a lot worse than if you were to, say, have patches of redness or skin, or even if there's a beard coming through. It looks better than having a thick layer of foundation melting. So you want to just do enough to cover what's going to come through and what is coming through. You don't want to use a crazy amount of foundation. Also, the longer you leave it in a place, the more pigment will settle to the bottom. So if you really want somewhere concentrated, leave it on for a minute and then try blending it out. So I'm using the Beauty Blender here. Make sure it's slightly damp. And don't swipe, stipple. Just to really make sure. You're not losing coverage. Because swiping, it's going to just move the product around. It's not going to do, like, press it in. You will press the pigment in and carry the remaining pigment over. Whereas if you're swiping, you're just taking the actual liquid. You're not taking the pigment properly. It's going to look patchy and quite low coverage. You also may have noticed my foundation does not match my skin. That is because I've been inside in quarantine, and when you are quarantined, your foundation is not going to match your skin. I'm going to add a little bit more to anywhere I notice I need it. A little bit there, a little bit there, a little bit just like over the eyebrows. I used to be definitely someone who would go in quite heavy with foundation, like it looked like I smeared peanut butter over my face until I would powder. But now I've kind of taken on the less is more mentality. And I find it's really been paying off. I'm just going to do a line right at the jaw so I can blend that down and anywhere where it's looking patchy. Also remember, in certain zones, like the center of the face, we are going to be adding concealer on top of this, so it will add to the coverage. I'm actually going to go wet this sponge again because I think it could stand to be a little bit moister, just so it really moves the product around more. So now I've wet this. It might be a little bit too wet. Let me dry it on my shirt a little bit. Yep, that's better. Because it being moist will also minimize the amount of product being absorbed by the sponge and really allowing it to blend the edges. I do swipe down the neck right here because you don't really need it to stay full coverage all the way down. Also, if you do somehow manage to have stumbled onto this video and are watching now, feel free to leave down in the comments what you would like me to do a video on. Anything you maybe struggle with, maybe like wig security. I know I'm going to be doing a proper wig security video in the future. Maybe even a styling if I'm feeling adventurous. But also, I'm kind of lazy with my styling, so yeah, it'll get a good finished result, but the practices aren't necessarily the best, so I'd really need to sit down and, oh, that's a little floaty, but I'd really need to sit down and do it according to the way you are meant to do things for like the health of the wig and stuff, because I know I've caused a lot of irreversible damage to my wigs, but that's fine, because I never ever ever change their style. There's only been like 2 wigs that went through multiple styles, and then the rest, they have all always been the same one exact style. You can also apply the exact same logic you did to the brows with your sideburns if you do want to block your sideburns for whatever reason. I normally have them shaved, but quarantine, no, barber. That's probably going to be it for me in terms of coverage. If you are wanting something low cut and your chest has like a lot of unevenness in it, or your foundation is like really off from the rest of your body, you are going to want to take your foundation all the way down to wherever your outfit shows. However, my foundation shade is close enough even still that I can get away with not wearing foundation on my chest. Is that bled? Yep, it is. So now I'm going to be taking my concealer. So the first one I go in with is the Tarte Shape Tape. So this one I use more for coverage than brightening, like it is still, as you can see, a lot lighter than my foundation. However, it is nowhere near as light as my second concealer, which I really go in with for highlighting. I like to do the entire upper lip because mustache is the main area I get any shadowing that comes through. Also the sideburns, but because you contour there, that's a little bit less important. But you may as well also, while you're here, lay down the base for the highlight, because it is obviously going to make all of the highlights that you put on top of it more extreme. So now we're at a point where our brows are successfully covered. Obviously they are not like completely hidden, but that doesn't matter because you do the final process when you're doing your brows and you carve underneath your brows. But I'm going to leave this episode here. In the next episode, we're going to be doing cream contour and also the cream actual physical aggressive highlight that really ends up reshaping the face. Also, if you're itchy while you're doing makeup or wearing makeup, have a sponge on you and just dab it over wherever it itches and it will no longer itch. So hopefully you enjoyed it. If you do, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, share, all those things that people on YouTube do. And I'll hopefully see you in the next video where we'll be going over contouring. I'll be explaining how to contour a face to achieve the effect that you want. So it won't be a format necessarily for my face. It'll be a format to get your own face, but I'll also be explaining how I apply that to my own face. So if for some reason you do want to, I don't know, do my face, you can. Bye, Susan.